What really pushes a person over the edge? What does it take to make someone truly snap? That moment, right, when all reason just vanishes and this primal instinct takes over. It's a pretty scary thought, isn't it? But here's the thing, it's not some new modern problem. This has been happening forever.
So today, we're going to dive into exactly that. We're going to look at three incredible moments from history, three breaking points, if you will. These are stories about seemingly ordinary people who got pushed so far, way past their limits, that the fallout was just devastating. Not just for them, but for literally everyone around them.
Come on, have you ever felt like that? Like you were just about to snap? That feeling of being totally backed into a corner, maybe ignored, or even worse, betrayed. Yeah, we've all been there. For most of us, thankfully, that feeling passes. But for the people in the stories we're about to tell, well, for them, it was the point of no return.
All right, let's get into our first story. We're heading back to 14th century France to meet a noblewoman named Jeanne de Clisson. And let me tell you, her story is one for the ages. It's got love, it's got betrayal, and oh boy, does it have some truly epic revenge.
Just look at this transformation. Seriously, on the one hand, you have a respected noblewoman, a loving wife, a mother of 7, and then a bloodthirsty pirate queen, one of the most feared people on the English Channel. So you gotta ask, how in the world does that happen? Well, for Jeanne, it all started with a life that was, by all accounts, perfect. See, back then, most noble marriages were just political deals. But Jeanne and her husband, Olivier, they had the real thing. They were genuinely, deeply in love, had a bunch of kids together, and lived this life of wealth and influence. It was perfect. But a little thing called the Breton War of Succession was about to come along and just shatter everything. So here's what happened. Olivier was fighting for the French, right? He gets captured by the English, but then he's traded back for, well, a suspiciously low ransom. And this plants a seed of doubt in the French king's head. So, during a truce, King Philip invites Olivier to this big tournament. But it's a trap. He has him arrested for treason, throws him into a joke of a trial, and then has him publicly beheaded. For a nobleman, this was the absolute worst, most dishonorable way to go. And this is the moment she snaps. The king has Olivier's severed head shipped back to Brittany and put on a spike for everyone to see. Jeanne takes her 2 young sons, makes them look at their father's decaying face. And right there, she makes a vow. The king is going to pay for this. And when I say she committed, she went all in. Jeanne sold everything she owned. Her lands, her jewels, all of it. All to fund her revenge. First, she raised an army. Then she bought 3 warships. And check this out, she had them painted jet black, with sails dyed blood red. And her flagship? She named it simply My Revenge. She started her campaign on land, sacking French castles and wiping out their garrisons. But she always left one person alive. Just one. And his job? To go straight to King Philip and deliver a message from her. After that, she took to the sea, becoming a terror of the English Channel. She'd hunt down French ships, and if she found any nobles on board, she'd personally behead them with an axe. Okay, wow. So for our next story, we're shifting gears completely. We're going to travel to 17th century Japan, to the famous pleasure district of Yoshiwara. And this is the story of a wealthy merchant named Jirazelman, whose breaking point was, well, very, very different. Now, to get this story, you first have to understand what an oiran was. These women were not your average courtesans. No. They were the absolute top tier, serving only the richest, most powerful clients. And here's the key part. They had the right to refuse anyone they didn't want. And one of the most famous oiran, a woman named Yatsuhashi, is right at the heart of this tale. So, Jirazelman was a rich guy, a successful merchant, but his face was badly scarred from smallpox when he was a kid. And because of that, back in his hometown, women wouldn't give him the time of day. But then he meets the beautiful Yatsuhashi, and she accepts him. She smiles at him. For Jirazelman, this wasn't just a business transaction. He was convinced it was true love. For maybe the first time in his entire life, he felt seen. And he became completely obsessed. He basically moved to the city, just showering her with insane, extravagant gifts. But while he was doing that, his business back home, it totally collapsed. He burned through every last bit of his fortune until he had absolutely nothing left. So now he's broke. He sees Yatsuhashi in a public procession and he calls out to her. And she just ignores him.
pretends he doesn't exist. And in that one single silent moment, his entire world just shatters. He realizes it was all a lie. It was never love. It was only ever about the money. He gets desperate. He goes to her one last time, begging her, just say one nice thing to me. Anything. And again, nothing. Complete silence. And that's it. He snaps. He follows her into a tea house, pulls out a short sword, and in one single violent motion, he kills her. All right, our final story tonight might just be the strangest of them all. This is the story of Jeffrey Hudson, a man who spent his entire life fighting to be seen as a person and not just a punchline. So Jeffrey was born way back in 1619, and he stopped growing when he was only 19 inches tall. His dad, worried about his future, gave him as a gift to a duchess. And this is how he met the Queen of England. At a huge royal banquet, a giant pie is brought out, and Jeffrey bursts out of it, dressed in a tiny suit of armor. I'm not making this up. The Queen found it so hilarious that she basically adopted him into her court on the spot. They gave him the nickname Lord Minimus, the smallest lord. And yeah, he lived in luxury, but he was always treated like a curiosity, a court jester, a joke. But deep down, what Jeffrey wanted more than anything was respect. And he got his chance during the English Civil War. He proved he was an incredible horseman and a crack shot, and he earned the rank of captain. He wasn't the Queen's plaything anymore. He was a man of war. But, old perceptions die hard. Later, while he was in exile with the Queen in France, this guy named Charles Crofts just would not let up. He mocked Jeffrey relentlessly. Finally, Jeffrey, insisting on his dignity as Captain Hudson, had enough. He challenged Crofts to a duel, and Crofts, thinking this was all just a big joke, accepted, and he showed up to the duel with a squirt gun. You can imagine the crowd just lost it, roaring with laughter. But Jeffrey wasn't laughing. He demanded real pistols. So they get on their horses. Crofts, probably still chuckling, fires first and completely misses Jeffrey's small target. And then, with the laughter still hanging in the air, it was Jeffrey's turn. And he didn't miss. He shot Crofts right in the forehead. The man who thought he was a joke was dead before he even hit the ground. And just like that, the laughter stopped. For the first time, maybe in his entire life, everyone was taking Jeffrey Hudson very, very seriously. So what happened to him after that? Well, it's kind of a mystery. See, dueling was illegal. The official story is that he was exiled, then captured by pirates, and spent 25 years as a slave. But then he randomly shows up at the Queen's funeral years later, which has some people thinking maybe the Queen secretly protected him all along, the man who fought so fiercely for his honor. So there you have it. 3 completely different stories, right? 3 different people from 3 different worlds. But when you look closer, they all share this common, tragic thread. You can see the pattern pretty clearly. For Jeanne de Clisson, the great injustice was the betrayal and murder of her husband. For Girzo Aymon, it was having his fantasy of love completely shattered. And for Jeffrey Hudson, it was a lifetime of being treated like a joke. Each of them faced an injustice that felt so massive, so profound, that their reaction ended up being just as extreme. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Where is that line? In their own minds, were they just seeking justice? Or had they been pushed so far beyond reason that the only thing left for them was destruction? What these stories really show us is that the line between a regular person and a monster, between justice and madness, is a whole lot thinner and a whole lot more fragile than any of us would like to think.